Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood with Hegwood Law Group, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens. And our very special guest today is Darren Nelson. And Darren has a company called Transitions with Darren.
Yes.
And so we were talking before, we started here today, because I was very confused that a doula did more things than childbirth. And so it'll be interesting today to see, how your particular type of, doulaing, if you want to call it that. And so let's kind of jump into that. And I'm very familiar with, how a doula works, with, pregnant women and things like that. But how does a doula, what does it do for end of life? How is it different than what, someone would expect from hospice care? And what kind of things should the family expect from what you do?
Well, that's a big order, tall order, and I'll try to be as concise as I can. And so the first part of your question was how, that you're familiar with a birth doula. End-of-life doula is the same concept, and it arose from just like the birth doulas started back in the 60s, 70s, because people were not happy that with the fact that birth was looked at as a medical event, right? And so that's how things started changing. And that's what's happening now with the end-of-life movement, end-of-life doula, end-of-life, just making the whole process of dying more, it's back where it used to be, sacred, right? It's part of life. We've basically put people in institutions. They're dying in hospitals. They're not dying at home. And we're not assessing their needs and helping them have the best death that they can. So that's the real function of an end-of-life doula, is to be the advocate for the patient. That's number one. But you're also holding space for the whole family, because we all know that we don't live in a bubble. Our families, the people that love us, our friends, all of that is going to affect how we die, right? So that's what my role is to walk with the family and or the patient or both of them and help them to work on anything that they need to work on so that their loved one can die the best death possible.
I'm all about dying with dignity.
Yes.
So I think that how you choose to go, and how you want to do that is so important. And being able to have those discussions of this is what I want, this is how I want it,
yes,
is very important, and we do that as part of our planning process to do all those kind of very similar things and really get the families talking. And so, because I think having conversations is so crucial, you got to talk. And,
you have to talk about it, and you have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yes. And so, nobody likes to talk about dying. And so, but, it's one of those things, it's a life event. It's going to happen.
Yes.
I look at it from a personal viewpoint of my faith is very strong. I know that when it's my time to go, I'm going to a better place. And
yes.
So, and I'm going to be extremely happy from then on, kind of thing. So it makes me feel better, is in that aspect of it. And so, but let's kind of dig down just a little bit. And so I'd like for you to give me, a little more examples, of how you can help. And so, because I had some huge misconceptions about hospice back in the day. I thought they were going to come in and they were going to be there the whole time. And boy, was I sadly mistaken.
Well, that's a huge thing, Kim. I mean, that's part of my passion, because when my father was dying and my mother-in-law passed a couple of months after that, one died with hospice, one didn't. I didn't even know about hospice. I knew it was end of life, but like you said, I had misconceptions. Yeah. So for me, I have a passion to educate, similar to how you obviously do as well. And when we have tools in our toolbox, we can handle things better, right? Yes. And I didn't have those tools. And most people who end up in end-of-life care nine out of 10 of us, right, have experienced something negative and we want to make it better. And so that's where I'm coming from. And so are the doulas that I went through training with and the ones I know. That's our main goal, is to help facilitate the best possible death. And an example would be advanced care planning. I know you do that, but those would be some things that I talk to the family about and the patient. Things like, do you want to be resuscitated? And if you don't, or what is resuscitate, what does that mean? Because it doesn't mean that we're just going to let you die. It means when you die, we're not going to bring you back. So once people understand that, they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to die naturally. So that's one part of it that I assist with. And I can assist with all of it or a little of it. Funerals, talking to families about, the cost of a funeral and what do you want to, how do you want to be remembered? Do we want a memorial service? Do we want a service before we pass away? Because that's a thing. And
I have a lot of clients that are doing that, having those end-of-life celebrations before they pass, because they want to be able to celebrate with their family.
And be able to have, if closure needs to happen, all of those things. I think it's beautiful to do that with people that you love. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that I spoke about this, because this is super important. You don't have to be dying to hire somebody like me. In my opinion, if you have a consultation with someone like me, then you can start doing the things that are going to set you up for the best death possible, right? Yeah. Similar to what you do. So we would work very well together, because I just delve deeper into the emotional, spiritual, whatever the family feels like they want to deal with, I can work with them, right? So it's all aspects. It's the whole person and the whole family unit.
And so I think it's important. And so I have a family member that's terminal, and she's planned everything, what she's going to wear, the whole 9 yards. And so she wanted to be able to give things to the people she wanted. She wanted to be able to do those things ahead of time, where, us, I'm like, I'm a little uncomfortable. You trying to give me stuff, but it was important to her, so, it was, but you don't think about that particular thing. It's important to them. And so,
well, that's right. It's not about us, right? That was a big thing for me when my loved ones were moving towards that end of life. And I had family members who it was about them. And so one of the things that I like to talk to families about is, okay, this is mom's journey. This isn't our journey. And how can we help her with what she wants, how she wants to die, right?
Yeah.
It's very personal. And when we talk about those things before mom's gone, it helps for us to not have strained relationships after, right? And we can talk about that all day long. So that's a big thing. We're all dysfunctional, but there's levels. And if we can deal with it head on, then we're able to, I think, stay a family unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Absolutely. And so I think part of what we do in planning is to try to alleviate problems in the future. So, because I tell people all the time, I already know how bad people can be. And so, my goal is to try to not have family problems after you're gone. So we try to work really hard to do that. And so,
yes.
But it's my understanding that you have the best 3 months of life tool that you use. And can you tell me a little about that?
I sure can. So when I mentioned a bit ago about how you don't have to wait till you're at the end of your life to utilize somebody like me. So when I went through my certification, one of the reasons I chose the program I did was because of the best 3 months of life. It's amazing. And it's simple. It's a tool that I use to speak to someone in a very intimate way about different aspects of their life. So for example, the main part of it is let's imagine that we have 3 months or less to live. What's important to us, right? What's important to us spiritually? How do we want to be cared for And at what point do we need the chaplain, or do we want a priest to come in? Do we want last rites? Do we not want last rites? So it covers this is what's great about it too. At the end of this, there's a vision, which is that would be the way you would love to see it, right? And then there's the reality. And so my goal with this practice is to take what your reality is and try to get you as closest to your vision as you possibly can. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. One of them would be reconciliation with family, right? Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. It's part of the domain. There's different domains, 5 parts of it. So if say you weren't connected to your brother anymore and y'all had a falling out, but for you, it's important to reconcile. But what if he doesn't want to, right? So the vision would be everybody's great, we're back to everything's good. But reality is maybe he's not able or willing, or maybe he's passed away. So my goal then is to say, well, how can we do that in this situation? What does that look like for you? And just guide that person through that so that we can at least get it to the point where it's the best it can be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what kind of training does someone get to do your job?
That's a good question. So currently, End-of-Life Doula certification it's not like getting a nursing degree or a bachelor's degree or a law degree, right? Mm-hmm. It hasn't been centralized, or there's not one body that takes care of that. So there's a lot of different, I guess, options in terms of getting certified. I chose one that was longer, more intense, and it was Conscious Dying Institute. And the reason I chose that one is because it was more in depth, and I had to look at myself, because I don't feel we have to be centered. We have to be okay with who we are, especially working with terminal end-of-life patients. If we're all over the place and we're taking on what's going on, it's more difficult for the families. We're not really being helpful, right? It's about us. So that's the big reason that I chose this program, because it made me really dive deep into my beliefs about death, my fears about death, what I would want. And it was intense, but it's necessary, because loving on end-of-life families and patients, you got to get pretty deep, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's when it's real.
So how do y'all get paid? Is it just is it hourly? Is it how does that work?
So there's no standard. So for me, once I found out what this was and this is what I want to do, I started researching it, obviously, and found out that it is private pay, and a lot of doulas volunteer their time, right? Or they can. They financially don't need it. Well, I would love to talk more about how you can get paid, because I've found a way to do that. So hospices are starting to know about what a doula is. And it's starting to grow in, I guess, in the consciousness of America that this exists. And I always find that if there's a need, somehow there's going to be something to fill it. So I'm super excited about that. But for me, I put it out there when I was training, because I work in the industry. I've worked in hospice sales, and I've worked in home health sales, funeral sales. And when I found this, I knew this was for me. So I just started telling my industry professionals, well, now I've been asked to come on board with a hospice and function as a doula and be paid. That's amazing. So there are ways to do it. And if this is your passion, you will find it. Right?
Perfect. Well, that's good. And so that's good. I think it's great when you can do something you love and get paid for it at the same time. And so
yes, that's what we're all trying to do, isn't it?
Most definitely. And so so what other areas would a doula be able to assist as far as with decisions?
Well, I think I covered a lot of them: reconciliation, advanced care planning. The other thing would be more of a physical part of it. Like many times when I would speak to families as a hospice sales representative, which is an odd thing to say, but they exist. And the biggest part of my job was educating. And I was always amazed at the lack of understanding that there is not a hospice house anymore. It doesn't exist. They're just like you said, they're not going to be there 24/7. And so for me, a lot of it is that it's a slow process of education. So even once we get onto hospice, you have to continually help those families and patients through the process. Because in the beginning of being on hospice, and hopefully people don't go on hospice the last 2 weeks, because it can be good for 6 months or more. So, in the beginning, it's not going to look the same as the middle or the end in terms of needs, right? Or questions or support. So that's how a doula can help, because we're able to go along the process with them the whole way, and they get to pick and choose how they utilize us. So if they just want me to be a sounding board for the family, I can do that. If they just want me to help with a legacy project, right? And that's, I don't know if everybody would know what that was, but it's leaving your legacy, right? So that's anything from a video before you pass, or writing a letter to somebody, whatever it is that you want to do. I can help facilitate that. So I think I answered the question, but there's so many ways that we can come in and support the family and the patient. They pretty much, it's like a buffet. They can do what they want.
You're like, yay. And so, and who doesn't love a buffet, right?
Well, I sure do. Mm-hmm.
So how does one find a doula? And so,
good question. So when I started telling people in Houston that I was doing this, I had to continually educate. Well, what is that? Well, that's weird. And so, so it's difficult because Texas, we're really behind the 8 ball in that. Oregon, right? California, Utah, Colorado, they have doula collectives, they call them. And it's a group of doulas who support one another and are able to take over. And the reason I'm telling you this is because as someone is passing, especially at the very end, some families want doulas to sit there the whole time, right? To be there, the whole process. So that is a lot of time and emotional energy. So you need other doulas to come in and relieve you or to support you. And so there is a national organization called INELDA, INELDA, right? And so what that is it's a listing of doulas in every state with their contact information and what they specialize in and what areas they cover. And each doula is probably going to have their own, I guess, rates, but typically how they do it, it's hourly. It can be done like say if they only want to talk about a vigil, then there'd be like a flat rate for that. Hourly, it's anywhere, I've seen it anywhere from $25 to $100. And then some of them, like I said, are free. They're volunteer. So,
well, that's awesome. And so this has been like a huge education for me, and I appreciate it immensely.
Oh, that's good. That's my purpose.
Yes, because, we have a lot of clients, when you work with a senior population, they're going to pass. And you know that. And so, the goal is to help families, as much as possible to get them, where they need to be. And,
and also, Kim, I think the big thing for us is talking about those hard subjects, right? Mm-hmm. We know we need to do that. That's our end goal, to get all this out on the table and help figure it out. But that's another part of my training is how do you subtly try to have those conversations with someone, and at what point is it appropriate, right? Kind of reading that person and reading the relationships and all of that, because it's very difficult to talk about these things.
I find I tell most people, I tell everybody in my family, we talk about everything at the kitchen table. There's not a subject that has not been discussed at the kitchen table, because we're talkers. We talk about everything. We don't care. It's just one of those things and we've started talking about, like my mother started prepping us back when my kids were little. I want to be cremated before most people wanted to be cremated, and back then I was like, oh yeah, no, kind of stuff.
Right.
And so we went through the gamut over the years of, okay, if I'm good with that, then what do we do with you? That kind of stuff. And so it's made for some amusing stories, over the years of how we got from point A to point B.
Yeah,
but
that's
I
great.
find that, and I had a client come in and she says, I really need to talk about this stuff. But every time I talk about it, the kids are going, la, 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 la. They don't want to talk about it and everything. I looked at her and I smiled. I said, you need to use your mom voice.
Yes.
I said, your mom voice. The one that says, sit down. We're having this conversation. Do not talk till I tell you you can talk, kind of stuff. You got to use your mom voice.
That was great advice.
And sometimes you just have to, look, guys, we've got to talk about this, so.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I'm a firm believer that presentation is everything. How you present something makes all the difference in the world, So we try to help clients, how to approach those things and maybe a little delicately, and we do it in estate planning. I had a client go, I'm having my estate planning done, but I can't get my parents in here. And I said, well, start the subject of go home and tell them, hey, I had my estate planning done. I feel so much better, that peace of mind. I said, and that will probably get them to thinking about they'd like to have that peace of mind as well. It worked, so.
Sure, and that's excellent advice. And if I can share, I did it. I did my advanced care planning, and I worked with a lawyer, and I had my husband get on board to do it. He was all for it. We had our kids come over. I had already talked to him about we were going to have a conversation with them and share everything that we had decided so that it wasn't a surprise. Everybody in the dining room, and he did not want to come in. I had to say, excuse me, and leave, of course, and say, okay, what's going on? So for him, it just made it real. And that's okay. And that brings up another important point is that everybody deals with it differently. Nothing's right or wrong. And a lot of times we label that, well, that's a bad way to handle it, or I wouldn't do that. And I've learned that we all handle situations like that differently. We're all in a different place in our journey, and it's okay. So
every family's different.
Yeah. And so I'll wrap it up. So what happened is we finally sat down, we started talking, and at the end of the night, after we finished having all the conversations about who gets what in the company and the property we have, my daughter says, because she's second born, why is Trey getting everything, before me, or, but is it just because he's the older, all those emotional things, those triggers for her as a second born came up. And that was so amazing to me that that's what she was focusing on. Why in all of this paperwork am I second? And what does that mean? And we're like, no, Hannah, that's just how it's done legally. Trey is the oldest. So he's listed as the first one when we start talking about each part of these advanced care planning, the will and the trusts and everything. So to be able to put that out on the table, she was in tears, and deal with that before if I'm passed away already, she doesn't have an opportunity to ask me those questions. So it was a real learning process for me, in another way that I can help families.
Yeah. One of the things we tell clients all the time is, for me, birth order doesn't matter. You want the right person for the job, and with, even in my own family, my mom was very emphatic about who was going to do what. And I was surprised by some of her decisions, but when she explained them to me, it all made sense.
Yes. And you had the opportunity to ask, and how wonderful is that? Yeah.
Yes. So that helped immensely. And so most definitely. So Darren, how does someone find you? Because I'm sure there's people out there that are going to want to visit with you now. So how do they find you?
So they can find me on my personal work phone, because as a doula, I make myself available in any way that is good for that family. So my phone number, 832-909-6485, and then my personal email, which I think you can see it on screen. So I probably do I need to repeat it? Okay. So it's Darren.m, M as in mother, .Nelson@comcast.net.
Perfect. All right. And so thank you so much, Darren, for being on the show. And you have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Kim. You too.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.